welcome to those of you who are just joining us. For the sake of time, we're going to get started here. My name is Kayla Magruder, and I am an admissions counselor here at Tulane School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. Welcome, everyone. A lot of your names look really familiar, so I'm sure some of you have been in contact with me already. If you have not, I'll drop all of my contact information towards the end. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're all having better weather than we are here in New Orleans. We are currently having a little bit of a rainy day. So if you see the lights flicker, that's why. But thank you all so much for joining today's Public Health Discovery Seminar series. Today's episode is Beyond the Plate, Public Health, Nutrition, and Action with Dr. Kealia O'Malley. Dr. O'Malley, take it away.
Thanks so much, Kayla, and thanks everybody for joining. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Welcome again, everybody. So glad to see so many names in attendance who are interested in the topic. It's very been a part of my life for a long time. So I am Dr. Kealia O'Malley. I have been at Tulane since October of 2010. I am currently a clinical assistant professor and the associate director for a HRSA-funded MCH nutrition leadership training program within the Department of Social, Behavioral, and Population Sciences at the School of Public Health. Prior to this role, I worked as assistant director for a CDC federally funded prevention research center. In that role, I had the opportunity and the privilege to work with a number of staff and students here who were doing work in communications, training, community engagement, policy advocacy, and also did some direct evaluation work within the center. So through that role and others, I've been able to partner with many local clinical and community-based nutrition-focused organizations here in New Orleans. I've been able to provide technical assistance in different capacities, facilitate collective impact strategies towards improved health equity in the region. So this has included some committee leadership guiding the City of New Orleans Health Department and their Fit NOLA initiative. So we're been able to work with the health department here, guiding the city's Fit NOLA initiative, supporting their community health improvement planning process, serving on the board of directors for local community-based organizations, including Grow That Youth Farm, supporting a collaborative here, the Refresh Project, and being on the steering committee of the New Orleans Food Policy Action Council. I'll talk a little bit about some of these organizations and the amazing work that they're doing on the ground here in a little bit, but just wanted to give you a little bit of context of my background and the work that I've been doing. In my current role, I've also been able to work with these partners to facilitate academic, community, and clinical partnerships to support student and public health nutrition workforce development activities. So these partners have included folks in the clinical setting, such as the University Medical Center that's close to the School of Public Health campus downtown New Orleans, Crescent City Farmers Market, the State Health Department, Children's Hospital, among others. So just giving you a little bit about my background, and I am going to advance my slides now. So as I was thinking about what to share with y'all, I thought it was important to talk not just about what I've done so far and the work that I have been doing in public health nutrition, but also tell you about how I came to become on this path. And as I was thinking about it, it in my mind was really taking sort of a, not a linear path. And I was thinking about shapes to visualize that and thinking about the city of New Orleans. And of course, the Mississippi River and the actual physical path that the river runs relative to the city of New Orleans really stuck in my mind. So for those who are not familiar with the geography of the city of New Orleans, the map that you see here is the Mississippi River, and it is is running along different areas of the city. So I was thinking about this as I thought about my path to public health, and you'll see a little bit why in just a minute as I talk through. So I was thinking about how food has always been something that was part of my family culture and traditions growing up. I come from a very large family, both my immediate family as well as extended family, big, large Italian, Irish families who love to cook, love to feed people, love to gather around the table for birthdays and holidays, celebrations of life, across generations, have pictures and memories of growing up as a child in the kitchen with my grandmother and great grandmother and aunts and uncles, and everybody's joining together, no matter where they are in life, coming together at the table. So it's something that has always been culturally for my family very important, and something that really has stuck with me throughout my winding path to get where I am today. Fast forward, and I completed my undergraduate education in psychology and music therapy at Loyola University in town here in New Orleans. I was a student during Hurricane Katrina. I was displaced for a semester, and while a very different experience as a college student during that time from what many who lived and worked in the city at the time faced, the experience of being forced to leave a city that I had grown to love really left me with a desire to come back and to stay here for a while. And I'm still here today. So that drive has definitely continued. It's a city that definitely can make its mark on you once you're here. So during this time, there are also a lot of things going on personally for me with my family that really got me thinking about nutrition, and had a family member who was diagnosed with high cholesterol at the time, who was referred to see a dietitian to get some nutrition education and counseling to make some dietary changes, and ultimately was able to shift lab values as a result of that. So that was something that I was like, wow, that is really cool to be able to make a change biologically through what we put in our body. Also thinking about, again, as a student, I was forced to be separated from my family who was nearby, not in the city, but within a 2-hour drive. I went to St. Louis University for the semester. So geographically, I was further away from my family, not with the friends who I had grown close with over the last few years in school, and was experiencing some mental health challenges at the time. And between thinking about that, thinking about physical, mental well-being, and starting to explore the connections between that and what gets put in our bodies and how that can impact both our physical and mental well-being. So I was able to come back to Loyola and the city of New Orleans and finish my degree. The last semester of school, I took one nutrition class because I was starting to get really interested in it and wanted to learn more. I came back, I took this class. I knew I wanted to stay in the city. I was looking for an opportunity to do that. I was pretty sure I wanted to go to graduate school. I wasn't totally sure exactly what I wanted to do at the time, but I did know that I wanted to find something that could connect food and nutrition, social factors, cultural values, thinking about how all of that connects with human behavior and what we choose to put in our bodies, ultimately how that impacts our health. And through my searching, I found at the time a graduate program in public health nutrition at Tulane here in New Orleans. Like, this is perfect for me. Applied and was a student here. Completed my both master's and doctoral training here in New Orleans at Tulane, focused in public health nutrition, which I will talk a little bit more about. One other experience that really impacted my interest in public health nutrition and the lens in which I have tried to continue to work and explore in this space. As an undergraduate student here in the city, the world in which I interacted with and the spaces and places that I was in, and when I was forced to leave after the storm, and the images that I was seeing in the media about the inequities and the hardships and the structural factors that influenced the experience that other people had in the city, particularly those who were of low income in low income neighborhoods, and oftentimes people of color who lived in the city in areas that were geographically in a different space than the university was, where my world kind of revolved around in the city. And thinking about the inequities that were really visible in that emergency environment and throughout the recovery too, which again will be I'll talk a little bit about continuing as I talk about some of the work that I've been involved in since then. So all of these things are kind of ruminating in my mind as I am coming to Tulane for the first time and starting to formally study in public health nutrition. So I started my education journey still having these other social, cultural, societal factors in the back of my mind, but at the time was still really thinking about working with individuals, providing education to them about how to optimize their health and well-being through food choices and what they put on their plate and in their bodies. And through my time in the public health program here, I was really able to develop a framework, understand a framework to think about how these other factors influence the choices that people make about what they're eating and whether they have a choice about that. So we talk about the social ecological model a lot in public health and is very relevant for public health nutrition. So thinking about not just individual choices, but what cultural and social family relationships, peer support are influencing individual choices, thinking about the physical and social environments that we're in, places that we live, where we go to school, our workplace environments, our home environments, the neighborhoods that we live in, and how different physical environments and physical spaces can also influence the choices that we are able to make about what we put on our plates. And then at a larger level, there are the policies and systems, societal norms, thinking about a US context, for example, versus other countries that have different societal norms around food and nutrition and how people access food and how it's prepared. All of these things are working together and provide opportunities for intervention, support, for creating environments and relationship policies and systems that support individuals to have the best options available to them to thrive in life. And then again, thinking about from an equity perspective, while I was a graduate student, both during my master's and doctoral work, I had the opportunity to work on a number of research projects at the time many that were involved with assessments of the food environment in New Orleans specifically. So this included driving throughout pretty much every neighborhood in the city, going into pretty much every retail outlet that sells food, from the large format supermarkets to the mom and pop corner stores to gas station convenience stores, fast food restaurants, and measuring what type of food those different stores sold, the variety of different types of fruits and vegetables, for example, amount of sugar sweetened beverages that might be available, where they're available in the store. And again, this experience really continued to motivate me, because it was just, again, reinforcing the structural environmental inequities about where different types of food were more abundant in certain neighborhoods, and where it was harder to find a variety of high quality fruits and vegetables, for example. So that led me to the position that I started in as a program manager for a number of research projects at the Prevention Research Center, working with a number of community partners and students to do community engaged research. A lot of the work that I have done from that time on was involved in looking at the impact of programs and policy changes and how they impacted the food environment, and ultimately what impact that had on what people were eating. So some of that work, I alluded to this earlier, but some of that work was doing some interviews with corner store owners, with distributors who were providing food to stores in the city, with neighborhood residents, to identify some of the barriers to working in those small food stores to increase the offerings of fresh foods in those spaces, and provided some recommendations of more systems changes that needed to be put in place to make that a sustainable strategy. Worked with a number of schools throughout the city who received and were implementing salad bars as part of their school food program. And through that work, we're able to identify different characteristics of students who were using those salad bars and suggesting recommendations, such as marketing that schools could implement to increase the use of those salad bars. We were able to show increased fruit and vegetable intake for students who were using them compared to others, and identified facilitators at the school level that were associated with continued sustained operations of that structure from an administrative perspective. And not surprising, this included having strong staff support and buy-in for implementing and continuing to use those salad bars, and having equipment and maintenance support for that equipment. I have done a number of different research projects that were around looking at the impact of a local fresh food retail initiative that the city of New Orleans adopted in the post-Katrina environment as an effort to address some of those inequities that I mentioned earlier about which neighborhoods had full service grocery stores, for example, compared to others. And the work that I did was able to show that there were fewer residents in the city who were living in a neighborhood that was identified to be low access to food stores after this program was implemented compared to before, and documented that a large number of stores that were opened using this this incentive funds did open in these low access areas and that show a positive impact for when a new store opened in a neighborhood that previously did not have a large format food store, found that particularly residents who did not have cars, so thinking about people who may be using public transportation or walking or biking potentially to get their food and to go to the grocery store, saw an increase in fruit and vegetable consumption following those new stores opening. I worked with other faculty in our department to document the emergency feeding response in the city of New Orleans following another hurricane, Hurricane Ida, that hit and impacted the city of New Orleans in September of 2021. We were able to, to work with students and community partners here in the city and identify evidence-based recommendations to provide recommendations for future response efforts related to natural disasters and crises that included doing this planning and implementing the plan using an equity lens. So really trying to emphasize the importance of targeting and prioritizing the communities and neighborhoods in the city that would be at highest risk of having food access issues in the case of a disaster crisis situation. I have also worked a good deal on a few studies that were looking at measuring the local impacts of federal food and nutrition program changes. So a number of years ago, there were changes made, for example, to the special supplemental program for women, infants, and children that provide food vouchers and financial support and nutrition education for women who are pregnant, people who are pregnant, people who are breastfeeding, and families with young children under the age of 5 who are at nutritional risk. The changes at the time included fresh fruits and vegetables for the first time in that package, included whole grains and low and reduced fat milk options for the first time. And we were able to document that this change in the federal nutrition program guidance impacted the foods that were being offered in community neighborhoods here in New Orleans. So we saw that 4 stores who were participating in this program, WIC vendors, these stores had an increased availability of lower fat milk options, whole grains, and a greater variety of fresh fruit, greater space that was dedicated to vegetables compared to before this change was put into place, and compared to stores who were not opting in to support that program. So again, this idea of thinking about ways in which both local, federal policies, disaster situations, thinking about the impacts that those can have on shaping the neighborhood environments or school food environments, and how that ultimately can impact people's food purchasing and consumption patterns. And then more recently and ongoing, have been involved in also kind of pulling some of this together to think about documenting, particularly in New Orleans. We've seen over time and in a number of scenarios, again, most recently, as I mentioned, both throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as Hurricane Ida, a community-driven response among and between organizations who are operating here in the city. So a lot of community-based organizations here are using really socially innovative approaches to address food access problems and also addressing those underlying determinants. So thinking about not just the individual and how they access food, but thinking about those higher level factors within that social ecologic model that impact people's ability to do that. So we did a mapping or census of food and nutrition, the organizations who are working in the food system in New Orleans, developed a resource guide that was used at the time for both other organizations to be able to reference. Students within our programs and other programs have been able to use this guide also to identify organizations that they would be interested in volunteering or working with in the future. And I'm working right now with an alumni actually to do an update of this project. So this was initially done in the pre-COVID environment here in New Orleans, and we know that there have been quite a few changes, both smaller footprint organizations who were not able to sustain their operations through the pandemic, as well as organizations who expanded their scope and mission to focus more on food and nutrition issues, particularly addressing issues of hunger and food insecurity. We saw a huge response and coordinated effort here in the city. So stay tuned for more on that. And now I wanted to talk a little bit more about what's going on in public health nutrition, the community food system here. I mentioned that we do have one of the things that really excites me and gives me energy and passion to continue to work in this space here in New Orleans is the really vibrant collaborative nature of many of the organizations who work in this sector here. Many of these organizations are members of the New Orleans Food Policy Action Council, FPAC for short. You may be familiar with food policy councils in other cities and areas of the country. Take a look and see if your city or state has one. Great way to connect and learn more about what's going on, and particularly different policies and programs that may need support to get passed. So two big wins that this group, so FPAC is a broad-based coalition of individual members as well as organizations in the nonprofit and for-profit sector who are all coming together to support making changes to support a more equitable food and ag policies to create a more equitable and just food system here and sustainable food system here in New Orleans. Two big wins that we just had before the holiday that were announced due to years of advocacy and education efforts. The city of New Orleans allocated funding in the budget for two new staff positions within the city government that are directly focused on food and nutrition. One is an urban ag liaison within the Office of Resilience and Sustainability to support and coordinate with small food growers in the city to make it easier for them to do that. And also a food access specialist who will be housed within the New Orleans Health Department and also work directly with the New Orleans Food Policy Action Council and its other member organizations. So we are very excited to see that investment happen and looking forward to see the collective impact that has with that investment being made. I think I mentioned I've been on the steering committee for FPAC for a number of years now and seen it go through a number of iterations. It was initially started in the post-Katrina environment here in New Orleans, making recommendations for city council to use the federal recovery funds that were coming into the city and allocate that towards making investments in addressing the food access inequities that existed. The Fresh Food Retail Initiative was those recommendations that were made. So a lot of this work kind of ties back together. And again, these recommendations to have dedicated staff at the city related to be able to liaise with organizations who are working in the more NGO or for-profit sector outside of government have also been recommended for a number of years. So really exciting to see this come to fruition after so many folks have worked so hard to make it happen. And then just wanted to highlight, thinking about from a food systems lens, thinking about organizations that work within these different areas of the food system here in New Orleans. Again, I think all of the ones that I'm mentioning are also members of FPAC. So just they're members of FPAC and often have programming, grant funding, collaborations that exist between them individually too. Again, this is something that I have not seen or heard of happening quite as much in other locations as we have here in New Orleans. It's people, again, specifically in the public health nutrition, food and nutrition sector here, really work together. It's a smaller but pretty tight-knit community where people and organizations support each other and are able to make a bigger impact by working together than they ever would be able to do trying to work independently. So just highlighting a few folks that came to mind. Grow That Youth Farm is the largest urban farm in the city of New Orleans. It is based in City Park in Mid-City, kind of the center of the city, pretty accessible to no matter where you live in the city. It's about a 10-minute drive at most, anywhere you go. Really cool organization that provides youth leadership development, provides paid positions for young people in the city to come and grow food and learn about sustainable food systems, also explore issues of equity and policy advocacy to inform plans for what is done with that space going forward. Also have CSA models for residents to support, lots of other programming that they do. They sell at the farmers markets here and work with many other organizations in the city. Recirculating Farms is a collaborative. Also, they're based in Central City, also kind of in the middle of the city geographically. Have been involved with a number of education and advocacy campaigns to support sustainable food systems. Currently also focused on sustainable fishing operations too. We are on the Gulf Coast. Seafood is a huge part of the economy here and a way that many people make their livelihoods in the food sector, and are doing a lot of work in this area to support them. Top Box Food is another really cool and exciting organization doing some innovative work. In the pre-COVID environment, they were working and doing food deliveries to residents throughout the city, partnering with churches and other community-based organizations, offering boxes of different combinations of food options that people could choose. Really exciting. They have been able to work out, so they've always accepted SNAP benefits for people who were eligible for that program and wanted to use federal funds, the funds that they got to go towards food purchases. And just recently have been able to work out a lot of administrative and operational challenges to allow for individuals who have those SNAP benefits to use them through online purchasing now and do home deliveries. That became a much more popular thing during COVID. We saw lots of food retailers and vendors start to have delivery options. That was not as much the case in a pre-COVID environment, so they were really kind of leading the charge on that. I also mentioned Crescent City Farmers Market, is run by Market Umbrella, the largest network of farmers markets that we have in the city. They, in addition to actually operating a farmers market and supporting the farmer vendors, who include representatives from Louisiana as well as Alabama, Mississippi, and other regional producers. They do a lot of programming and cross support with, for example, Grow That Youth Farm. Young people come to the market and sell. They do cooking demonstrations, nutrition education for children. They also have led efforts statewide to support market match incentive programs. So again, for people who are choosing to use their SNAP or WIC federal food assistance program benefits at the farmers market, they have programs that allow for them to match that. So if you spend $20 of your benefits there, they will provide you with an additional $20 to spend on fruits and vegetables at the market. And they, with FPAC and other organizations support here in the city and across the state, were able to get state funding allocated to support a state program throughout Louisiana over the last couple of years. So another exciting win. And additionally, organizations such as Ochsner's Eat Fit program that works with restaurants throughout the city to identify, do some nutrition analyses on their recipes and identify those that meet different health criteria, putting indicators and icons on their menus to make it easier for people to make informed choices while dining in restaurants. I'm not sure if it's still there. I know at one point they were working with the Superdome, for example. So even if you're at a Saints game, it's an easy way for people to identify food choices that meet certain health criteria. And additionally, we have the LSU Ag Center based here in New Orleans does a lot of work with, also in partnership with many other organizations, but works with schools, health fairs to provide nutrition education and information about growing food, cooking, and different ideas for recipes and foods to consume. So all of that, and then so talking about my path to public health nutrition, talking about the community food environment, community food systems here in New Orleans, and kind of backing up again to think about public health nutrition is the application of nutrition and public health principles to design programs, systems, policies, and environments. So thinking about that social ecologic model that aim to improve or maintain optimal health of populations. So public health nutrition professionals may be employed at many of the organizations or types of organizations that I've talked about today. So it could be a setting such as state, local, or national agencies, organizations in the public, private sector, federally qualified community health clinics, nonprofit organizations, departments of education, food assistance programs, hunger relief agencies, early child education settings. There's a growing farm to school and farm to early child education center program here, as well as elsewhere. Might be employed as nutrition educators, school health coordinators, directors of nutrition services. Additionally, public health nutritionists work in federally sponsored programs at the local level, such as administering programs such as WIC and SNAP at the local level. So at the local, state, or federal level in agencies like the USDA, the CDC, Food and Drug Administration, Maternal and Child Health Bureau, and Indian Health Services. So one of the things that hopefully was evident throughout this conversation, but reiterating, one of the things that has always drawn me to food and nutrition and public health nutrition specifically is because it's so broad. It allows for you to work in so many different settings. Training in public health nutrition provides you with skills to work in so many different settings. And increasingly, in the last, 5 to 10 years or so, issues of food insecurity and hunger have had a renewed focus within entities and spaces who have not historically had food as their primary focus. So it's been exciting to see that kind of cross-sector communication and partnerships and awareness and interest in working in this space and valuing the skills of those who are trained in public health nutrition. So again, just kind of summarizing the things that have driven my passion to work in this sector. I think I started talking about this, and I've talked a little bit as I went about food and nutrition is connected to everything. It's personal. It is something that brings people together. It is something that we all need. We all need to eat. It makes it easy to talk about, and is easy to communicate and get buy-in and support from folks who may not be thinking about this all the time, to understand the importance of having food on your plate. It's interdisciplinary. I mentioned you get to work. Public health is very interdisciplinary itself, but particularly in the public health nutrition sphere, you get to work with people in so many other different sectors. So again, talking just today, mentioned folks that I've worked with who are in an agriculture space, in government, media, journalists, city planners, architects, developers, retail, economic development. There's so many synergies among organizations and practitioners in the field that makes it really exciting, and the collaborative efforts that are helpful to sustain that work. And then finally, the Biden-Harris administration have invested in a renewed attention to addressing food access and hunger. For the first time in 50 years, held a national conference on addressing issues of hunger, nutrition, and health. An initial conference was held about 50 years ago to bring up the same issue, and since that time have faced a dual challenge of not just addressing hunger and issues of food insecurity, also needing at the same time to address the increased prevalence of diet-related chronic diseases. So holding both of these at the same time. So the national strategy is focused around a number of pillars aimed at improving access and affordability to food, integrating nutrition and health, empowering consumers to make and have access to healthy choices, and enhancing nutrition and food security research. So we've seen collaboration among federal agencies that's going on right now to really have a renewed interest and investment in supporting work in this space. And finally, I couldn't not make a quick plug and share a little bit about the public health nutrition program at Tulane. The MSPH nutrition program trains future public health leaders to shape policies, administer programs, and communicate to the public to improve nutritional health and food security of populations. I've listed some of our course content here. It includes local food systems and nutrition assessment of populations, food nutrition policy, nutrition, and food and nutrition related issues in low and middle income countries, professional practice, health systems policy, design strategies, and evaluation. It's a wonderful program with great faculty and a really wonderful environment. Folks doing so much work on the ground, a great place to learn and support the work that's going on here. So I also have included my email address if anybody has specific questions or wants to connect separately offline. I'm always happy to set up a time to meet or correspond by email. I've included a link to my Google Scholar profile also at the bottom here if you're interested in keeping up with the research work that I've been doing, and included handles for our Facebook and Instagram accounts for the nutrition program. We'll share research that our faculty are doing, job opportunities in the field, highlight current students and alumni in their work. So just kind of a nice way to check out some of what we've been doing. And I am going to stop sharing slides. I think at this point, that's all I had prepared for today, and happy to answer any questions or have discussion with folks.
Thank you so much, Dr. O'Malley. That was great. If anyone has any questions that they would like to ask now for Dr. O'Malley to answer live, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we'll read them aloud. And I'm also going to, in the chat, I am dropping Dr. O'Malley's faculty bio that is on our Tulane SPHTM website that has her contact information and a little bit more, just like what you talked about here, her background and what classes she teaches and things of that nature. But if anybody has any questions, we'll answer those live. All right, we have a question. Did those partnerships have a long process?
Yes, not sure which specific ones you're asking about, but generally, the partners that I talked about today, and FPAC being an entity that is made up of a number of partners, it continues to shift and change as organizations working in this space have staff turnover or have mission shifts, given what issues are coming up to be addressed. But for me, for example, I've worked with a number of these organizations since 2010. So that's quite a long time. Some of them are newer. So Topbox, for example, I can't remember exactly when they were formed here in New Orleans, but it was after 2010. So it varies, but yes, I would say a number of the partnerships and relationships that I've developed here, and the depth of the impact of some of those partnerships. Again, the work of FPAC leading to these staff positions those recommendations were made initially 10 years ago. So definitely takes time. I think for students, there are opportunities to connect. So for me as faculty, I've been here for a long time. I'm planning to stay here going forward, don't have any immediate plans to leave. So I am continuing to work with partners and I'm able to provide opportunities for students as they come in to the program. Have a number of alumni who have ended up being employed in these agencies. So that makes for a really great continued relationship, because they're often very open to working with students because they were in those shoes too before. So while students may come in and out, I have maintained those relationships and continued to develop them over time. So long answer short, yes. I would say yes, they've taken time to develop and deepen.
Thank you so much, Dr. O'Malley. We have two more questions. The first one, do we collaborate with other universities, specifically in West Africa, relating our programs?
That is a good question. I don't know that I don't have the information to answer that.
Yeah, not specifically for like with nutrition, but some of our other departments, some of our other programs do collaborate with other areas, other regions. We have research that happens all over the African continent, actually. So yeah, maybe not more nutrition related, but we have some research going on. Next question, was there a lot of resistance in the food deserts getting information and changing behaviors?
Good question. For a lot of the work that I did with the Prevention Research Center that was focused on supporting new stores opening and research around new stores opening in what might be defined as food deserts or areas that have low access to supermarkets. We had community advisory boards and steering committees that were made up of neighborhood community residents and leaders from those neighborhoods who were on this board. And they have also been advocating and demanding that they have a supermarket in their neighborhood. So I think what I saw anyways, and I don't have necessarily research on this, but anecdotally from the work that I did, saw a lot of residential demand that, again, kind of from an equity justice issue. If you're in a neighborhood that doesn't have a supermarket, but maybe it used to 50 years ago, and the neighborhood 10 minutes away from you does, there's a lot of demand and advocacy from neighborhood residents to have a store open up. So that's what I saw.
Thank you so much, Dr. O'Malley. We have one last question and then we'll let everyone go. It starts off, great presentation. I'm curious about your work implementing salad bars in schools. You mentioned that this had a lot of buy-in among the schools. Was this buy-in already present before this work started, or did you have to create a work level of buy-in?
Yeah.
If so, how did you do so, and or how would you recommend doing so?
Yeah, great question. And you're thinking like a public health practitioner already. So, and to clarify, I was not involved in implementing the salad bars. They were as part of, this was during the Obama administration. First Lady had an initiative that was developed called Let's Move to support, get buy-in and support from the business sector to support childhood healthy activities, including diet, behavior, and physical activity. As part of this initiative, the United Produce Association partnered with them to make a bulk structural donation to a large number of schools in the New Orleans area to donate these salad bar structures to schools. So that was done, and our team was brought in to explore what the usage of those was and what impact that had on diet and health of the students within those schools. So we were not directly involved with implementing. We were measuring and getting perspectives from people who were involved in implementing. And let me see if I can find the buy-in. So some of the results that I mentioned, and they're, again, if either on my faculty profile that Kayla shared or the Google Scholar, there are links to some of the papers that describe in depth this work, but found that for the schools that were able to sustain those operations, that they already had buy-in from staff who were there, that they were motivated and wanted to offer this to students, and that was associated with sustained operations. And there are a lot more details in the papers. You're welcome to access. If you have trouble accessing them, feel free to send me an email and I can share them with you directly. So yeah, thank you so much for the questions and everyone's participation.
Yes, those were great questions. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you all for your participation. I have dropped Dr. O'Malley's faculty profile in the chat, and I'm also going to drop our Admissions Connect with Us page in the chat as well. You can feel free to meet with me, our other admissions counselor, Cassie, or our director, LaShawn. We have office hours 3 times a week here at School of Public Health, and just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.